In my previous video, I discussed the difference between the Combine and Wolfenstein's German Reich, and in the end we found that they were unsurprisingly very similar to each other. However, since the Combine is an intergalactic empire that conquers countless other worlds, could the Reich survive if the Combine were to suddenly invade? In today's video, I will be discussing the military size and strength of these regimes, and then explaining a possible scenario where the Combine invades the world of Wolfenstein, which was personally made by me. So without further ado, let's begin. The Greater German Reich's technology, both civil and military, derives from Da-et-Yichud technology. Thanks to the German discovery of one of these Da-et-Yichud technology vaults in the 1940s, the Germans were able to reverse engineer this technology into several highly advanced superweapons for the war effort, quickly changing the tide of the war and letting the Germans eventually conquer the entire world by 1948. Several of these weapons include mechanized robotic units, both small and large, that are fitted with an AI system, giving them full autonomous behavior. The Eva's Hammer, a gigantic nuclear-powered submarine equipped with a nuclear warhead cannon and able to house several fighter aircraft. The modernized Horton Ho 229, a wing-designed fighter jet that is fitted with two powerful jet engines and has an armament of 4 nose cannons. Lastly, there is the Sun Gun, a giant mirror orbiting around Earth and has the capability of melting entire cities when activated. These are the most notable ones. But there are several other superweapons the Germans use, and I have a dedicated video where I go into more detail explaining these weapons. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. Continuing on, with the capabilities of Da-et-Yichud technology, the Germans have established outer planetary bases on both the Moon and Venus, displaying that the Germans are also capable of long-distance space travel and outer planetary colonization. The amount of active personnel serving in the German armed forces is not specified, but with the entire world under German rule, with the exception of a few regions with heavy resistance, estimates could be anywhere from 10 to 40 million personnel needed to garrison the entire world. The estimate could also vary on how much the garrison forces are automated robotic units, but this makes Germany a formidable force. Let's see what the Combine has to show. The Combine is a vast interdimensional empire composed of multiple species and technologies assimilated from countless conquered worlds. The Black Mesa incident unfortunately made Earth appear on Combine radars and be occupied following the 7-hour war. The Combine's main military force are synths. These are biological organisms that have gone through enforced evolution and alteration by the Combine to be transformed into biomechanical weapons. These include infantry units like the Synth Soldier and Super Soldier, grotesque-looking organisms that have a similar anatomy to humans, making them ideal as infantry units. The Strider, a tall and highly agile tripod organism equipped with a pulse cannon and a highly destructive warp cannon. The Gunship, and ground assault air unit also equipped with a pulse cannon. The Dropship, a transport unit able to quickly carry a container full of Combine infantry units directly into combat zones and swiftly circle back. The Hunter, a tripedal synth specialized in reconnaissance and hunting missions, and is armed with 2 powerful fléchette launchers capable of disintegrating biological matter. The Crab Synth, a crab-like organism serving as a heavy ground assault unit by being heavily armored and armed with a giant minigun. Besides synths, the Combine also has several non-biological weapons. This includes the standard-issue pulse rifle, an advanced piece of technology specially made for disintegrating biological matter. Manhacks, small drones propelled by razor-sharp rotors and used for slicing up enemy targets. Lastly, there are the roller mines, electrically charged spherical devices used for disrupting the operation of transport vehicles and electrocuting enemy targets it comes into contact with. At first glance, it doesn't seem like the Combine's technology looks strong compared to the German Reich, but keep in mind that little is known about the Combine. The military force found occupying Earth in Half-Life 2 is merely a security force. It could totally be possible that the Combine could wield weapons beyond our comprehension, and given that it's a vast interdimensional empire, its number of active personnel could be anywhere from several hundred millions to even in the trillions or quadrillions. For the sake of this scenario, I will be sticking with the known technology of the Combine. Lastly, this scenario is not intended to be as realistic as possible, but more as an interesting thought experiment. If you think there are some things in this scenario that could be different, then let me know in the comments. Without further ado, I present to you the possible scenario of a combine invasion of Wolfenstein's German Reich. On May 16, 1960, Dr. Gordon Freierman clocked into work in the Schwarz Mesa facility located somewhere in the deserts of New Mexico of the German-occupied American territories. His daily assignment was to make his way into the anti-mass spectrometer chamber and push a xenon crystal sample into the beam of the anti-mass spectrometer. As soon as he did, the crystal violently reacted with the beam, dispersing large amounts of exotic energy and creating a resonance cascade that tore a hole in the fabric of space-time connecting Earth to the border world of Xen. On the other side of this border world was the Neolanth, a being that is the last of its kind as the Combine exterminated them. This creature escaped to Xen and had been waiting for an opportunity to find a new home while in this border world. Once the resonance cascade connected the two worlds, the Neolanth sent its enslaved army of alien creatures through the portal and invaded the research facility. Casualties were high, as the Neolanth's army slaughtered scientists and the security force throughout the facility. Surviving scientists attempted to reverse the effects resonance cascade, but were unable to as the Neolanth kept the portal open on the other side. Dr. Gordon Freierman, who had survived the initial experiment and fought his way through the facility, was tasked with traveling to Xen and killing the Neolanth once and for all, which would also be the last time anyone saw the Freierman for a while. A distress signal is sent out to call in reinforcements. This distress signal would be received by Area 52 in Roswell, and a special military unit is dispatched to the site. However, this military unit is tasked with a strange objective by their superiors. They were informed that all on-site personnel were considered traitors to the Reich and were ordered to kill anyone they came into contact with. A rather unusual situation, but questioning their superiors' orders was above the unit's pay grade. As the units arrived at the scene, they saw the havoc caused by the Neolanth's invasion. They shot their way through the facility, killing Xenian creatures. Surviving personnel who for a second thought that help had arrived were quickly gunned down. The unit made it to their designated place, where they armed the nuke and called in for exfil. However, as soon as the unit was ready to leave, the nuclear device detonated, completely disintegrating the military unit and wiping out the facility off of the face of the Earth. Someone had tampered with the nuclear device when the military unit left for the exfil and rigged it to detonate sooner. Nothing remained. Even the portal had been sealed thanks to the efforts of Dr. Gordon Freierman. The nuclear blast would not go unnoticed, however. German High Command was notified of the Schwarz Mesa incident, and an investigation was soon launched. Several testimonies from surviving individuals involved in the incident would puzzle German High Command, who sent a military unit to the facility tasked with killing all on-site personnel and destroying it with a nuclear device. This was a severe breach of protocol, and High Command suspected foul play. Someone had infiltrated their ranks to receive high-level clearance to issue these commands, but they had no leads as to who this could be. Death's Head, who had visited the facility himself a couple of times, was puzzled by this incident. After just a couple of days, news quickly spreads within the Reich regarding the incident, and Mustache Man himself addresses it, blaming it all on terrorists. In the beginning of June, just over a week after the incident, strange portals begin appearing in several places around the world. People glanced at these portals in awe, but German High Command knew this was the result of the Schwarz Mesa incident, and that they needed to prepare for unforeseen consequences. Shortly after their manifestation, these portals started spewing out huge amounts of Xenian wildlife. These creatures who had been ripped from their homeworld had no choice but to adapt to this new world. So they began attacking both native wildlife and humans. The countryside is completely overrun with Xen as millions begin fleeing to a safe place. Fortunately, cities that were constructed with uber concrete and designed to meet German architectural standards become impenetrable fortresses against Xen and safe havens for refugees. Not all is good, however. The South African front line is thrown into disarray as both resistance and German forces get swarmed by Xenian wildlife. Rainforests around the world become completely infested with new inhabitants from Xen. Small towns in the countryside get overrun, and those unable to escape get killed or eaten by these creatures. For the first time in 12 years, the Greater German Reich is at war with a powerful foe attacking on every front imaginable. Mustache Man addresses the world yet again, urging everyone to stay strong and framing these portals as a terrorist attack. Wallace Brent, who had been tracked down by German authorities, is brought before Death's Head himself for questioning. After unimaginable amount of torture, Brent finally cracks and tells the truth to Death's Head. A strange man had nudged certain things into place to orchestrate these chain of events. Brent also explains of a coming force known as the Combine and how hopelessly outmatched humanity is. Brent also tells Death's Head how to communicate with the Combine to halt the total extinction of humanity. With all the info extracted, Death's Head disposes of Brent. He is vastly intrigued by this highly technological interdimensional empire and hatches a secret plan regarding them. For now, Death's Head notifies the German High Command of these revelations and tells them to prepare for all-out war. On the front lines of the Xenian invasion, automated and mechanized ground forces, especially the Panzerhund, prove to be extremely effective against the Sen. Their heavily armored chassis make them invulnerable to these creatures. Military factories begin producing automated units at an unprecedented rate and shipping them out to the front lines. In China, the Zenin threat is completely neutralized. A portal storm that opened near the reinforced Great Wall of China would have its contents completely vaporized by the hundreds of automated flak cannons installed on the wall. Squadrons of Hortons begin firebombing campaigns in infested areas. Superweapons like the Ausmercer and the Sun Gun are used to destroy large nests created by Xenian wildlife. Automated ground units shred through Xenian bugs and start pushing back Xenian forces to the portals. By the end of the second week after the initial invasion, the Xenian threat had been contained near the vicinity of the portals of which they come from. All wasn't over, however, as the German military anticipated the second wave, which was the Combine. Reconnaissance satellites that had been sent through these portals during the initial Xen invasion were detected by German defense systems and swiftly destroyed. On the other side of the portals, the Combine got all the info they needed. They learned that Earth was ruled by a highly technologically advanced totalitarian regime, and their military tech matches that of their own, but that didn't really matter to the Combine, as they had the numbers advantage. This conquest would be a little bit more costly than usual, but Earth's abundance of natural resources would be more than enough to replenish the losses. Who knows, maybe they can even assimilate some technology too from the German Reich. On June 17, 1960, the Combine finally launched their mass assault on Earth. The Combine knew which portals were death traps, like the one situated in China and the one in heavily fortified Europe, so they targeted weak points in the Americas, Oceania, and Africa. Thousands of dropships and gunships swarm the skies of these regions. German anti-air, along with Horten jet fighters, shoot down huge numbers of Combine airborne units, but the sheer amount of these aircraft are overwhelming German air defenses. On the ground, it is pure bloodshed. German soldiers are especially vulnerable to the synth soldiers' bio-disintegrating pulse rifles. However, the synths don't have it easy either. Panzerhunds maul entire platoons of synth soldiers, while guard robots blast them to bits and pieces. The Strider's warp cannon proves to be a deadly weapon against these mechanized machines, but their skinny legs make them vulnerable to being crushed by the Panzerhund's jaw, effectively disabling them. The Crab Synth's high rate of fire Gatling gun is able to significantly damage German mechanized units, but itself is vulnerable to German weaponry. While this mayhem is happening on the front line, the Combine sends out hunters to gather intel on German defenses behind the front line. Despite the German military's best efforts, the Combine is able to get a foothold on several places on Earth by the end of the first day of the invasion, and continue to make significant gains in the following days. Cities that once offered shelter to refugees become nightmarish war zones for both Combine and German forces. Some are even completely leveled due to the fighting, and cities that are utterly lost to the Combine are obliterated by the Sun Gun, assuring mutual destruction. Large human populations that are captured by the Combine are not immediately killed but taken more as hostages to be used as leverage against German attacks. By the end of the fifth day, the German military along with a small portion of lucky civilians retreated from the Americas, Central Africa, and Oceania. Even the Sun Gun has seen its operational limits and needs to cool down for some time, giving the Combine time to mobilize its forces for a massive amphibious invasion into both Asia and Europe. The human population that is under Combine rule now is rounded up to the remaining urban centers left standing. These people are then brutally subjugated to submit to the Combine. Resistance forces would form to oppose the Combine, but they would not last long against their overwhelming military presence. The Combine did not hesitate to kill anyone and their families who were suspected of being a part of a resistance force. Some individuals and their families would completely disappear, presumably meeting their demise in one of the Combine's many cruel human experiments. Just as the Combine was ready to launch their invasion, several missiles appeared in the sky in Combine-controlled regions. Before the Combine could even react, they are disintegrated by the resulting blast of the nuclear payload on these missiles. Every major Combine military installation, urban center, and other strategic targets marked by the Germans are annihilated. What remained of North and South America, Central Africa, and Oceania was a barren wasteland. The Combine's idea of keeping these human populations alive as leverage was in vain, as the Germans had complete disregard for them. German scout planes surveilled these zones shortly after and found that only the portal storms remained, with no traces of any Combine forces left. The German military could sigh a breath of relief for now. On the morning of the sixth day, however, Combine forces swarmed through the portals at an even more unprecedented rate. German scouting parties that were sent into the barren wastelands are slaughtered by the rapidly advancing Combine forces. While the Combine did lose its initial force in the nuclear blasts, they had coordinated a second and more powerful attack that completely threw the Germans off guard. By the end of the sixth day, the Combine had reached the shores of Europe and Asia. Mustache Man is evacuated from Berlin to the aerostat habitat on Venus as the German military fights to stave off the Combine forces. The Ausmerzer, which had been valiantly fighting alongside the German military, finally meets its end in the Battle of Berlin after roller mines infested the insides of the air platform, making it lose control and crashing into the People's Hall. In China, the Great Wall of China is very effectively holding off the Combine invaders, but it won't be long until the flak cannon ammunition is exhausted. The bloodshed continued on the seventh day. Death's Head finally makes his move and contacts the Combine. He introduces himself and explains his and humanity's use to the Combine. Death's Head is willing to end the war with the Combine if they let Death's Head become the new ruler of the remaining human population and give him some level of autonomy in his leadership. In exchange, the Combine would get Death's Head unwavering loyalty, a moderate chunk of Earth's resources, and access to Da'at Yichud technology. The Combine could decline this offer and exterminate humanity, but given that they have sustained significant losses and that it would take more resources to fully conquer Earth, the Combine decided to accept the deal. Death's Head would contact remaining German military leaders, ordering them to stand down. He would later make an announcement explaining that he had made a deal with the Combine. He assured the populace that their favorite Mustache Man was safe on Venus, but that he will be in charge now. As the last bullets stopped firing, the 7-day war had finally ended. 20 years after the war, and the world is a nightmare to live in. The world is divided into Combine resource extraction zones and Death's Head German Reich. Death's Head regime would somewhat resemble the world that once was, with a somewhat basic functioning economy and social structures, but would still have Nazi ideals at its core. Surveillance and a military presence is as prevalent as ever. People's homes are constantly searched to ensure no one is hiding enemies of the state or are part of a resistance group. Regions are constantly patrolled by soldiers and abominations of infused Da'at Yichud and combined technology. As a sign of good gratitude for his cooperation, Death's Head was given a personal citadel in the heart of Berlin, where the People's Hall used to be. It's in this citadel that Death's Head continued on, researching and inventing more miracles of technology, but also performing unimaginably cruel human experiments on dissidents of the Reich. In the Combine resource extraction zones, the Combine devastates the landscape to extract every last bit of natural resource that can be found. As a deal with Death's Head, the Combine would also get a notable percentage of the Earth's seawater. Portal drains are installed in the depths of the oceans, decreasing sea levels slightly. Not all hope is lost, however. A resistance is formed by the Kreisau Circle and surviving members of the Schwarz Research Facility. They are planning something big, but they are missing a piece. That piece would be Dr. Gordon Freierman, who unexpectedly shows up 20 years later in a train wagon heading to Berlin. So yeah, that's basically how it would go down. Despite Germany's advanced technology, they would still ultimately get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of Combine forces. Of course, in a more probable scenario, the German Reich would still last a mere 7 hours against the Combine, and humanity would ultimately be exterminated due to Germany's self-destructive ideology. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like this, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below what other scenarios I could do.